Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna has confined to be working with Uhuru Kenyatta. Welcome to Kenya Lens Media, where we give you news updates as they break, and kindly if you are new here, consider subscribing. Now, the Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna now says that retired President Uhuru Kenyatta gave full political, financial and logistical support to Azimio coalition in 2022 general election, and that the coalition's defeat was caused not by lack of backing from the former president, but by internal mismanagement within its own ranks. The 2022 presidential election remains one of the most closely contested and debated elections in Kenyan recent history. Now, nearly 4 years later, new remarks from Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna bringing the internal dynamics of what campaign backs into focus. Sifuna, who serves as the Secretary General of the Orange Democratic Movement, says former Uhuru Kenyatta stood firmly behind Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition and his presidential candidate Raila Odinga. According to Sifuna, the former head of state did not simply endorse the coalition publicly. He says Uhuru invested his political weight, his influence and significant resources into the campaign. In an exclusive interview with the K24 TV, Sifuna stated that the retired president supported campaign operations both financially and in kind. He indicated that Azimio had access to funding, visibility and logistical facilitation that allowed it to compete directly against its main rival, the then Deputy President William Ruto. The remarks directly address a narrative that has circulated within political circles since the 2022 vote that Uhuru Kenyatta did not do enough to secure victory for Raila Odinga. Sifuna rejects that claim. He maintains that the former president opened up a key political regions for Azimio, including the Mount Kenya region, which had traditionally been viewed as his stronghold. That access, he suggests, he gave the coalition a strategic opportunity. But he says opportunity alone was not enough. According to Sifuna, the responsibility to persuade voters and manage campaign operations effectively lay with the coalition's own leadership structures, and it is there, he argues, the mistakes were made. He attributes the eventual defeat not lack of support from Uhuru Kenyatta, but to poor coordination, mismanagement of funds, and weaknesses in handling election agents on the ground. Election agents play a critical role in Kenya's electoral system. They monitor polling stations, safeguard vote tallies, and also represent candidates during the counting process. Sifuna says some of these agents were not properly facilitated. He claims that funds meant to support critical campaign structures were not managed strategically. In his assessment, this compromised the coalition's ability to protect and consolidate its vote. The comments reflect an internal critique rather than an external accusation. Instead of faulting external forces, Sifuna is pointing to structural lapses within Azimio itself. He suggests that some leaders failed to translate the backing they received into effective grassroots mobilization. He also refers to ill-speaking by certain figures within the coalition, saying such remarks may have alienated voters and undermined broader campaign messaging. The political backdrop of 2022 was complex, and at the time President Uhuru Kenyatta made a historical political shift by backing Raila Odinga, a long opposition leader who had previously challenged his presidency in court. The alliance reshaped political alignments across the country. It also split traditional voting blocks and altered expectations ahead of the August poll. Campaign rallies brought together senior figures from across the coalition, including leaders such as Kalonzo Musyoka and others aligned under the Azimio banner. The coalition presented itself as a broad national movement built on new unity and continuity, and yet despite the high-profile endorsements and the visible support of the sitting president at that time, the final result declared William Ruto the winner. The outcome sparked political debate and legal challenges, but ultimately the Supreme Court upheld the result. Since then, discussion within Azimio has continued over what went wrong. Sifuna's latest remarks add to an internal reflection. He goes further by acknowledging that some leaders within the coalition later turned against Uhuru Kenyatta after the defeat. He says the former president was criticized and in some instances humiliated politically by individuals who had benefited from his backing during the campaign. In that context, Sifuna has publicly apologized on behalf of certain party members for what he describes as disrespect directed towards the former head of state. His position highlights the tensions that followed the election loss, and for Azimio supporters, the 2022 outcome was deeply disappointing. For many, the visible unity between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga had raised expectations of victory. The coalition had access to established networks, campaign resources, and national visibility, but elections are decided not only at the top, they are shaped at polling stations, in communities, and within campaign structures. Sifuna's argument is that while endorsement and funding are important, disciplined management at every level of campaign is equally critical. He emphasizes that logistical planning, agent coordination, and message discipline must align if national campaign is to succeed. His remarks suggest that the 2022 election, that alignment was not fully achieved. The broader political implications are significant, and by defending Uhuru Kenyatta's role, Sifuna appears to be protecting the legacy of the coalition's alliance and clarifying responsibility for the loss. It also signals the attempt to stabilize internal relationships within the opposition as the country looks ahead to future politics context. The conversation touches on deeper themes in Kenyan politics. Endorsements from powerful leaders can open doors and shift perceptions, but they cannot replace grassroots organization. Financial support can facilitate movement and messaging, but it does not automatically guarantee votes. And unity at the top must be matched by unity and discipline throughout the ranks. And in 2022 experience, as described by Sifuna, reflects those realities. It demonstrates that electoral success depends not only on high-profile alliances, but on careful coordination across all levels of a campaign. And for supporters of Azimio, the reflections may serve as a lesson. For the broader public, they offer insight into the inner workings of a national political machine during one of the country's most competitive elections. Nearly 4 years later, the memory of the campaign will still shapes political conversations. The alliance between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga remains a defining moment in Kenya's modern political history, and the narrow margin of defeat continues to influence strategic thinking within opposition circles. And Sifuna's defense of the former president reopens debate about accountability and responsibility. It reframes the narrative from one of the insufficient support to one of internal shortcomings. At its core, the message is clear, and according to the Nairobi senator, the resources were available. The backing was present, but the execution did not meet the moment. As Kenya prepares for future electoral cycles, the political parties across the spectrum are likely studying the lessons of 2022 closely. Campaigns are not won only by endorsements. They are built through structure, discipline, and consistent management. The reflection now emerging suggests that even the strongest alliances must be matched with effective ground operations. The 2022 election changed the country's political direction. It elevated a new president, it redefined the opposition, and it left behind unanswered questions within one of the largest coalitions in Kenyan history. Sifuna's remarks attempt to answer at least one of these questions, and whether the former president did enough. His response is direct. He says the support was strong. The failure, in his view, lay elsewhere. In the end, elections test not only the popularity at the top, but discipline at every level, and lessons of 2022 continue to echo across Kenya's political landscape. That's all for today from Kenya Lens Media, and kindly if you're new here, consider subscribing as a way of motivating and helping this platform to grow.